Hello, and welcome. Welcome to my very empty apartment and another edition of Atlas Info Live. We are very grateful, pleased that you could join us this afternoon. And as promised in the advertisement for today's live stream, this empty space behind me here is emblematic and symbolic of what so many of us encounter on a veritable daily basis in our lives, in this world that we have begotten for ourselves, or rather has begotten for us, or however you want to phrase it. The fact of the matter is all of us, no matter who we are, encounter regularly a feeling of meaninglessness in so many different aspects of our lives, so many things that we encounter. And many of those phenomena may have in the past filled us with excitement, enthusiasm, exuberance, even passion, joy, love. And now we try to turn to those very same things and they come up short. They come up empty. Literally empty, literally null and void. Even if on the surface they're shiny and new and thrilling and exciting and spectacular and modern, contemporary, technologically astounding, but all of that wears off so very quickly. And what we're left with is this tremendous feeling of being let down, this tremendous feeling of all of that promise, all of that sizzle, all of that pizzazz, that wow factor is now gone, and all that's left is an empty nothingness. And perhaps it's good to just do a quick inventory of the kinds of phenomena that we're talking about here, ones that I think we can all agree upon in a universal sense. One thing that comes to mind is fast food. Now, when we were kids, at least when I was, I mean, what kid didn't love going to McDonald's? And I'm not talking about, because they had the ballroom and the playpen or whatever you call that place, the play place for the kids. When I went to McDonald's, the Happy Meal didn't even exist. When I was a kid, they didn't even have Happy Meals. There was no play place. There was no, jungle gym or ballroom or any of that stuff. It was just, you went for the food. You went for those really thin cut fries that were always crunchy and never soggy. And I mean, who didn't love going to McDonald's as a kid? It was just like, it was a treat, right? And as a kid, you don't really know any better. Or those fruity cereals we used to eat as a kid, or or candy, or what have you. All those, all the junk food, right? Lucky Charms, right? A cereal that's like 50% marshmallow. Like, it's like, it's clear that they had no nutritionists working at General Mills in the 70s, right? Because what nutritionist is going to sign off on a kid's cereal that's 50%, 50%, well, what is it? It's cornstarch and sugar. Well, actually, I guess it's cornstarch and high fructose corn syrup. That's what a marshmallow is, right? But this stuff brought us joy, right? It made you happy. It made you, and it certainly gave you that get up and go so you could get to school, right? You ended up at school and you were wired, right? All that sugar. But so, yeah, so fast food, junk food, there's an example of something now as an adult. You have some fast food, you have some junk food, and then in very short order, you just feel like garbage. It's as if the food that you ate is sucking the life out of you because it's so devoid of anything of value that it's actually like siphoning your life force in the process of having to digest it. It's like it's taking more energy and more effort for your gut microbiome and your biology to break down and try to find something of value in that junk food that you ate. So you end up spending more energy than what you get from it, except you get all the sugar and the fat, right? So you gain weight, but you gain nothing of any real essential value. There's no nutrition there, and there's no energy there. Like I say, you're actually losing energy to it, but you're gaining fat. It's a very strange. It's a very strange exchange. It's a kind of very parasitic exchange, if you think about it. But that's an example of something that's null and void. It's empty. But we can look to other examples. Something that comes to mind is, of course, as you know, if you're a regular watcher or listener, um, I've always been a fan of film. Now, I wouldn't call myself a cinephile by any stretch of the imagination. I have not seen every film, right? I can't, quote you the the names of the cinematographers of all of Fellini's films, for example. So I'm not fanatical about the art form itself, and I'm not obsessed with the the art and science of filmmaking as such. It's not the craft that drew me into film. It was the magic of filmmaking, the magic of storytelling in that medium, which is a dramatic medium, but a highly visual and highly oral medium. And the timeless universal truths that could be conveyed through that medium that made it vibrant and rich in a way which far exceeded the visualizations and the artistry, the technical side of the art and craft. But of course, just like anyone, I really enjoyed excellent performances and excellent writing and excellent direction and cinematography, so I could appreciate all of that. But nowadays, let's take nothing away from the craftspeople and the artisans and the technical people working on films today. Let's take nothing away from their skills or abilities. Many of these individuals have studied the greats, and they have tremendous technical ability. And where the technology has advanced to, with things like Steadicam and robotic cam and drone footage, and then there's CGI and the volume and motion capture, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. Technically, the films being made today are better than ever from the standpoint of the science and artifice of the medium. But if you watched Avatar 2, you walked out of that movie theater and you basically forgot about the movie the next day. It left you with nothing. It gave you nothing. It was completely empty, devoid of any truth or meaning or any kind of substance. It was spectacular to look at. And the water effects were incredible. As a piece of digital filmmaking and the combination of live actors and digital filmmaking, it was unprecedented. The level of realism, so take nothing away from James Cameron as a technical filmmaker. But my God, to put all that time and all that energy and all that effort into basically a 2.5 hour tech demo. That's what it was. It was a 2.5 hour tech demo because you left that theater, wowed, maybe. You just like someone who had just gone on an amusement park ride. But it's completely forgettable. The same could be said for that film that came out a number of years ago called Gravity. And it even won the Academy Award for Best Film, if I'm not mistaken. It certainly won for Best Cinematography. And, at the time, the hype around that film was, they were talking it up like unbelievably, overhyping it. Oh, it's the next 2001 Space Odyssey. Well, I challenge you right now to recall a scene from Gravity. And how many scenes can you recall from 2001 A Space Odyssey? How many times have you rewatched Gravity? How many times have you rewatched 2001? This is a simple test. You look at the films that you keep coming back to, or the music that you keep returning to. And every time you watch it or every time you listen to it, you've seen the images 1,000 times. You've heard the lyrics or the dialogue 1,000 times. And yet it always manages to move you somehow. Whereas modern filmmaking, with all of its technical proficiency and all of its whiz-bang special effects and CGI and all the rest of it, and all the contemporary acting and everything else, it's just empty. It's just void. How many contemporary films have you gone back and watched even a second time, let alone 10 times, let alone 100 times? But Lawrence of Arabia, I watched so many times I can't even count anymore. Or, Lord of the Rings, the Return of the King, or even Blade Runner, or Gladiator, or Driving Miss Daisy, or The Shawshank Redemption, or The Godfather, or it goes on and on and on and on. Or Apocalypse Now, or right but what are the films that are being made today that will be spoken of in the future as being classics? Like honest to goodness classics, timeless, universal works of art. And the answer is very, very, very precious few. And that includes many of the indie films, which for all of their realism and down-to-earthness and slice of life and dark grittiness and, auteur sensibility and everything else, it was Plato who said that if you put real life on the stage, it becomes a vulgarity. Art is meant to present a hyper space, a hyper reality, a space that holds a mirror to us, not to our reality. We all know what reality is like. We don't need a mirror held up to our reality. We need something more. We need a mirror that penetrates past the surface of reality. We need a portal, a window into the esoteric, into the underworld and the overworld, into the very soul of humanity that is timeless and universal and speaks across cultural barriers, language barriers, barriers of time and space, that which is universal. We need art to be a mirror unto our soul, unto our true selves, and unto the true challenge, the true conflict, the true purpose and meaning of life. In other words, that which is food for the soul. And yes, very often, soul food is also delicious. Soul food can be very entertaining. Soul food can have a beautiful presentation. But this tastiness and entertainment value and beautiful presentation, these are bonuses. These are the icing on the cake. They are precisely the garnishes and the finishing and everything else and the plating that make that source of nutrition come alive and gives it personality and uniqueness and that whimsy that help make it memorable. So it's the sum of all the parts, including all the care and attention that was given to the presentation. But everything nowadays is just presentation. They forgot that you have to begin with the soul food to begin with, the nutrition, the thing that actually sustains a human being, the sustenance, the real sustenance. And that's not entertainment. And that's not aesthetics. Right? It's not a good beat that I can get jiggy with. Because all of that's what you encounter. That's what's on the exoteric level. But then when you open the door and step through, you end up in this empty apartment. It's null and void. It's just hollow and echoes with the sound of your sighs of disappointment, and echoes with the emptiness of a soul that was hungering for truth, hungering for beauty, hungering for light, and receive nothing. And this is, you go down the line, and this is becoming more and more apparent throughout our lives and through all the different aspects of our life. Even, and this is this is nothing new. Coming back to film, we can turn to Charlie Chaplin and that monologue, that speech that he gives at the end of The Great Dictator. And he spells it all out right there in that monologue. When he says, and this is, remember, this is only like, this was in the 30s leading up to the Second World War that he made that film. Yeah, he says the aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. Oh no, hey, I don't want to read that part. That's anyway. You should, if you haven't heard the speech or you haven't heard it in a while, you should watch it. It's available on YouTube. Just, it's The Great Dictator final speech. It'll come up right away. But he says how all this modern technology has brought us all these conveniences, but has made us feel more separate, more alone, more wanton. All these comforts, all these outward conveniences has left us less connected, less human. And indeed, there is that aspect of mechanicity involved. And invariably, that's where we're going to end up, because that's the foundation of the human condition. It's the eternal conflict. What people say, the eternal conflict between good and evil. It's the eternal conflict between consciousness and mechanicity, between free will and determinism, between true creativity and derivative entropy. But I only mention The Great Dictator, and you can go back earlier, prior to the days of film, prior to the days of radio, all the way back into the birth of the Industrial Revolution during the Victorian era. And many writers, many authors express and predict the same lament, they see the same problems emerging, where industry is creating all of these opportunities and producing all of this efficiency and productivity, but in that process, our humanity is being diminished, if not altogether lost. Nowadays, they talk about humanity being on the verge of what are we up to? The fourth industrial revolution? I believe the first industrial revolution was the steam age, the steam engine. The second industrial revolution was electricity. The third industrial revolution was the internet. And now we are upon the fourth industrial revolution, which they say is going to be AI. All along that progression, that line of industrialization. And surely the march toward a world that is dominated by artificial intelligence is going to represent the lowest point of humanity. It will represent the diminishment of humanism itself to the extreme. And they will argue and they will rationalize and they will say, no, but it's going to free humanity. It's going to free everybody from work. It's going to free everybody from the dullness and the day-to-day mundane this and that. And you're going to be able to thrive and do whatever it is you've always wanted to do. And that's what AI and robotics is going to allow us to do, or allow humanity to do. That's what they claim. That's the sales pitch. But clearly, they haven't spent much time in self-reflection. And clearly, they don't know what drives a soul. Or the true nature of the self, the highest self, which is selflessness. And that brings us back to the founding question, or the founding theme of today's live stream, is that why does everything feel so empty? When you have the world at your fingertips, you have the internet, you have Amazon, you have 1,000 channels, and with video games, you even have alternate universes to download into your device and go and escape into a completely different world, in a completely different universe. Tiffany, on the topic of AI, Tiffany, hello, Tiffany. Nice to see you here again. And she says, there is no stopping AI at this point. The question is, where do we go from here? Excuse me. We've looked at before multiple times the nature of nature, and the two forms of nature, the two aspects of nature. So to answer this question, where do we go from here? Have I I think this is, there should be something called symbols. And of course, there it is. There. Just going to put it like that because it's easier, it makes more sense. We've talked about this before. It won't necessarily be new. This is obviously, the dichotomy of light and dark. People have called it good and evil, masculine, feminine. There's all of these different dualities and dichotomies that fit into this model, into this symbol, this diagram of reality. But the one that I focus on, I put light and dark here because each of these has a nature. And it comes down to self. Selflessness is no self. The antithesis of no self is all self. Right? So no self is selflessness. You have no self to care about, essentially. And selfishness is all self. You don't care about anybody else. And logically, it just makes sense that light has to go somewhere. And it just so happens that even physics knows this, that the dark, black, absorbs light. So white reflects light selflessly, right? It radiates light. And the darkness, the black, absorbs light. And you even see that in cycles and circles. But the torus, now I'm not going to be able to draw a torus. And I don't think I have one handy. But I wonder if I can go to YouTube and put what if we did that and turn the volume down? Can we get a 3D version of this? There, okay. Well, this one's doing all kinds of weird collapsing things, but you get the idea, right? There's an emanation and an absorption, right? That's the general idea. When you visualize a torus, you have a radiation and and gravitation. That's how Walter Russell describes the two forces. So we can add that to our model here. We have radiation, and then we have gravitation. Now, this also works with electricity because you have repulsion and attraction. And it's always opposites attract, which is actually not really opposites. It only appears that way, but let's not get into the weeds of the metaphysics and the fourth dimensional science of attraction and repulsion and all the rest of it, because we want to deal with the higher level, the more meaningful, rubber meets the road wisdom that we can learn from all of this. And how do we overcome that emptiness? And we have to understand, we have to accept that nature has two natures. And that this darkness, this, people call it low vibration or low energy, or, whatever you want to call it. It's actually negative. It absorbs energy. And it hoards energy. That's its job. That's its purpose. And the fact that it constantly must be renewed is testament to the fact that it can become stale, and it falls into entropy, which is degeneration, old age, and death, if it's not constantly being renewed somehow. But that renewal process happens by virtue of the light, but happens by virtue of selflessness, of gaining the capacity to be fused and become one with, and be able to radiate again. If you've ever been to an old age home, and I don't necessarily mean like an old age home for recent retirees or whatever, I mean something that's closer to being a hospice, but not quite a hospice. If you've ever been to a ward of an old age home where there are those elderly individuals that have basically been abandoned there, lost and forgotten, that everybody is 80 years and up, 80 years old and up, or 85 years old and up. And many of them are suffering from dementia. They've suffered from strokes. They're bedridden, or they're in wheelchairs, or what have you. And you go into a ward like that, and what you experience and how you feel, if you're sensitive, is you see so much matter, so much darkness, because you're witnessing human beings whose candle is all but burnt out. It's just the final flickering of a candle, because they're surrounded by the downward spiral. They're surrounded by death energy. It's coming for them, each and every one of them. And they're all been pooled and collected into one place. This can't be good for anybody. Not the people working there, but certainly not the residents. Because the energy of all of this is very real, and it absorbs the light, and it hoards the light, but it also uses the light up. And when that candle runs out, that inner candle inside of us, that's it. It's game over. There's no extending that life, which I find actually, on the one hand, quite sad, and on the other hand, quite ridiculous and quite humorous, that you have an entire industry based around longevity that, as we speak, is working on all manner of attempts at extending life. Because this aspect we all live with, right? It's called ego. And I'm not referring to that self that makes the choice between to be or not to be. I don't mean the singular I of the self that you identify with. I'm talking about egos, plural. And the shaitan, right? Or the false self, the amalgamation of all of these egos into that false self. With all its desires and fears and anxieties and all the rest of it. We all have that. And this aspect of us, all it can do is siphon energy and use up energy. And when it uses that energy, it just wastes it. When it utilizes it, it wastes it. The energy flows down and out. The energy is stripped of its positivity, of its light, that gets used up, and the rest is radiated as negativity. So that's why what radiates off of this, right, is toxicity and negativity. So an example is fear. Obviously, it creates a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of nervous energy. And it gives off nervous energy, and you can feel that. You can pick that up. But then it's the same with anger. Anger releases that energy, but that energy is conditioned now, right? The light that's been absorbed, the energy of the candle is conditioned by anger, and the anger feeds on the positive aspects of that energy, and it becomes transformed, transmuted into negative energy, and that's what gets released. It's like a waste product. But that's a vibe, that's an energy that, strangely enough, triggers and awakens anger in other people. So in the morphogenetic field, right, in the torus and the magnetic field around an individual, that anger can spread like a wildfire. And so you end up with mob mentality, and you end up with people rioting and so on, because they get caught up in all of that toxic energy, all that negative energy radiating, and then that starts affecting each other. And then it's a downward spiral, but it's a growing, it's an explosion. In other words, it's an expanding downward spiral. And that false self that's radiating all this toxic negativity, all this death energy, all this, it fears death. And in that scenario of that old age home, the light is running out. And in an absence of its life force, of its fuel, of its source of energy, of its source of power, it starts, wreaking havoc, freaking out, like any animal backed into a corner. Yeah, it says, Jennifer Christie says here, a nursing home. We were calling it what, an old age home. But yeah, it's the same thing. And you see dementia and sometimes just hopelessness and there are all sorts of conditions that really take prominence in individuals as they age, and they become weaker and weaker and weaker, because their source of energy and their willpower and their ability, a lot of what they had repressed and suppressed by sheer willpower throughout their life, when you lose your source of strength, when the candle is going out, you don't have that fire, you don't have that energy to repress and suppress like you used to. Those things are going to be acting up like they've always wanted to. And you ask anyone who's worked in a nursing home, and they will tell you some very scary stories about what some of the residents have done, and what some of the residents have subjected other residents to, but also to staff. Because we are witnessing what happens when there's hardly any left of this, and so this, increases. Maybe I can do a better color here and make that work better. Right? This goes up as this goes down. Jennifer adds, my mom could no longer walk or be cared for at home. She ended up in one. In her last year, she was extremely negative and judgmental, more so than ever. And Jennifer says, I had trouble visiting. I left feeling nervous, angry, and depleted many times after visits. Jennifer's is not an uncommon experience. And if you're especially empathic and sensitive to energy, it's not just a nursing home that will do this to you. It'll be bars, it'll be nightclubs, it'll be casinos, it'll be anywhere where egos take precedent, and where any place that's designed to suck energy and suck the life out of you, right? And a casino, I mean, this is overtly a place for that, right? Because it's a casino is there to take your money, and money is an expression, it's a symbol of energy. You worked hard for your money, presumably, right? You have your blood, sweat, and tears are in that money. And as you pump it into the slot machines, or you lose it on the blackjack table, all of that blood, sweat, and tears, all of that energy, all of that passion, all of that life force is being exploited and is basically going down the drain. And so when I walk into a casino, forget all the bright lights and everything else that's trying to keep it upbeat and positive and so on and so forth. I can't even eat the food in the buffet. I don't care how, quote, good it is, because it's surrounded by this vortex of negative energy. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet in the middle of a black hole. It's like a group of predators on the Serengeti that dug their own oasis to attract the zebra and to attract all the wildlife, because, right, everybody comes to the watering hole. So the predators got together and said, hey, you know what? Everybody comes to the watering hole. Why don't we dig a big hole? And then after the monsoon rains come, it'll be filled up with water, and we'll create our own oasis. And then all our food will come to us. That's what a casino is. That's all that a casino is. DFMC, I'm going to call you DFMC squared, I think. He says, good afternoon, welcome. And Jennifer Christie says, yes, I'm a hermit nowadays. Benjamin Raphael says, when it comes to money, I always feel a bit down whenever my bank deducts mortgage payments. Any LOL. Yeah, so that's a different type of That's a different type of exploitation. But you get the idea, right? Of what we're getting at here. So this is the nature of mechanical nature. This is the two natures of nature. And it comes right down to the electric universe. If energy is not being created and brought into this world, light, resplendence, beauty, truth, it's being devoured, it's being consumed, and is being hoarded. And how that happens, it, how that happens is complication. Mechanical nature has its mechanism by which it takes energy and converts it and breaks it down into various different forms that it can use, that it can absorb. But that's the point. It absorbs light, it absorbs energy. And you might be asking, well, what's the exchange? Surely there's an exchange here. And the exchange is that selflessness cannot know itself as selflessness. It no thing, nothing can know nothing. Or sorry, nothing can't know nothing. Nothing cannot be known. So as you see, there's a little bit of light inside of the darkness. And there's a little bit of darkness inside of the light. There's a little bit of mechanicity or determinism. And it is this exchange that allows this continuum to go on and allows for the light, for selflessness, to extract experience. It can experience being. And the interplay between being and not being. And the drama, the experience between the two. And that's what it absorbs. And it is that light, that love and selflessness trapped and contained within mechanicity, that expresses in and through mechanicity. That propels, and that longs to be one with its source from when it came. And so this absorptive quality that absorbs the light over here, this is precisely wanting and trying to attract and reabsorb what was lost over here. But this darkness wants to hold on to that light at all costs and wants more, wants all of this light. And that's why it's chasing each other. So in other words, the darkness here that naturally absorbs light wants to increase this, wants to increase this, right? And wants to, actually put it out of balance. Wants all the light for itself. Now, why did I bring up the nursing home? And not just to inspire Jennifer to share this story and of her visiting her mom and her mom, having all this darkness expressing in her, and then, her feeling depleted when she goes into the nursing home and so on, not just for that reason, but because a humanity itself starts out. Let's see if we can hang on. Is it going to do? Oops. Let's try that. Oh, it's my board that's backwards, or it's not straight. Okay. Didn't make it a straight line. There, okay. One, and then this way. All right. Two. Okay. So we start out up here. And then we go down like that, something like that. And up here, we call it the golden age. Can you guys see that? Should I make myself smaller? Can you guys read that? I did it in kind of like an orange. I don't know if you guys can make that out. Maybe you can make it out. So this is up here, the golden age. And then from golden age, we go to silver. Whoops. And then from there, we go to bronze. And then finally, we go to iron, the Iron Age. So these are the 4 stages, the 4 ages of a humanity. What does this mean? Practically speaking, it means that in terms of the light, the fire, the vibrancy, a humanity has the most during its golden age. This is a humanity's peak, a humanity's prime. Oh, Jennifer says those stages remind me of the yugas. That's because they're directly related to the yugas. Okay, because down here, the Iron Age has another word. We call it the Kali Yuga. So the other yugas, I don't remember them offhand. What are they? Sattva Yuga and something else. I like keeping it simple in this case, and just using the gold, silver, bronze, iron, because everybody knows what that means. I don't know if everybody knows what the Sanskrit words mean. So, but the Kali Yuga, I mean, we're all familiar with. I think by now most of us are familiar with that term. But the point is just like in adult life, we know when we're 20, in our 20s, and then we get into our, let's say 20 to 35, maybe 40, right? And then we get into our 35, 40s, and then from there things start going downhill into middle age and our 50s, and we wake up and things are getting more and more creaky, more aches and pains, not the same amount of energy that we used to have, not the same vitality that we used to have. Certainly women, not really capable of having babies anymore, maybe even becoming menopausal, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally we have what in life we would call old age. That's the Iron Age of humanity. That's the Kali Yuga. Because from this point onward, there's only one inevitability, and it is inevitable. It is inevitable. Because the light, the fire that was here, the candle flame, let's draw it this way, right? The candle is eventually going to go out. If you want to visualize it that way, this is the candlestick is up here, and as the candle burns, it's going to keep burning, and the candlestick is going to be going lower and lower and lower and lower until eventually you run out of candlestick, you run out of wick. The candle goes out. There is no candle that burns forever. Not on this level of reality. It goes out. But what is that candle? What is that flame? Where does it come from? And if what I was sharing and what Jennifer was sharing with her experience is true, and if down here in old age, because this is the same as old age, okay, when you go into that nursing home and it's like you're feeling the life sucked out of you because you're surrounded by all this death energy, if what we're saying is true, and that darkness, that mechanicity, it's running out of the light, the life force, then how does it have anything here to be able to radiate? You see, this is the flame, this is the candle flame that has the potential to light. And as it creates light and creates through mechanicity, you have sculpture, you have art, you have film, You even have video games. You have all of this creativity, but imbued in that creativity, in the heart of creativity, is this light, this flame that is the source of all energy and all vitality and all positivity and all beauty and truth and wonder. And it connects back to the source of all of that light. And in my lifetime, right, we've gone from where? From, like, I've been around for 50 years, just over 50 years, 51 years. So we're just talking about the difference between here and here. It's not, this graph can't even properly show how little a shift there has been on this time scale, because of course it's not very scientific, this graph. But that's why we look back and we just marvel, like, just 100 years ago, 200 years ago, at the things that people made. And then when you look back thousands of years ago and you look at things like the pyramids and so on, and you look, we just look in awe and wonder, and at what the Renaissance masters were painting, for example, the Sistine Chapel, and just there, and it doesn't mean that everybody was perfect, but there is a there's something very peculiar about the fact that if you go into a museum, you will see bits and pieces of pottery, you will see everyday utensils, you will see handiwork, craftwork, so on, hundreds of years old, thousands of years old. And and there's something about that's still alive, that we can still feel the energy in it. It's like we can, just by touching that artifact that's thousands of years old, it's almost like we can peer into the experience, into the existence of the culture, of the society, of the peoples whose who whose energy and vitality was the crucible, was the womb from which this artifact was birthed into the world. Even in my house, there are tools that are in my possession that belong to my father. And there are tools and there are artifacts in my possession that belong to my grandfather, and that my grandfather inherited from his grandfather. And it's not a question of nostalgia. It's simply a link to the past. It's these artifacts have something about them that it feels sacrilegious to throw them away, to discard them as if they don't matter. And yet, what do we create today that feels that way? Certainly not most of the art which is in most of the galleries and museums around the world, because the banana duct taped to a canvas, I'm sorry, there is nothing about that, absolutely nothing that warrants any preservation, let alone public display and awe and wonder. Someone duct taped a banana to a canvas and called it art. It is completely and utterly void. It has no fire in it. It is dead on arrival. DOA. Like most of the utensils we have, like how many people actually have real pottery and eat off of real pottery, or use handmade knives or handmade tools? So much of our world is surrounded by industrial mechanized objects and creations and cookie cutter, you know, pressed out, you just know what I mean, like assembly line, completely disposable stuff. And of course, we live in a completely disposable society, and dispose we do. In fact, we still have there are still refrigerators around that they are as old as I am. We have a refrigerator in this house that's 25 years old. The refrigerators you buy today, you'll be lucky if they last 5 years. Because mechanicity, as we move, especially as we move into the Kali Yuga, moves in this direction because the fire is burning out. Plus, on top of everything, we're in the age of the Kali Yuga. Or sorry, I apologize. Yes, we're in the age of the Kali Yuga, but we've also moved into the age of Aquarius. And the age of Aquarius is the age of water. And Aquarius resists, for example, the Piscean urge to make everything last. So that's why the Great Pyramid, built at the end of Atlantis and the beginning of the Piscean age, the Great Pyramid of Giza has lasted as long as it has, and it will continue to last because it was built with that energy in it. The stuff that we're building today will not last. It'll turn back into water. It'll just dissolve. Everything we create is completely disposable. And certainly very little of what we create is worthy of reverence, because very little of what we create is actually handmade anymore. And so it doesn't, and you'd be hard pressed to say anything about the humanity that brought it into the world other than, oh, they must have been machines. It must have been a race of machines. Why? Well, because everything they built were just machines. They were focused on machines. They surrounded themselves with technology. They surrounded themselves with machines. They drove machines. They watched machines. They cooked and they cleaned with machines. They did all their washing with machines. Everything is a machine. So it's not a surprise when Tiffany asks, where are we going from here? It's not a surprise when she says there's no stopping AI, and when she asks, where are we going from here? We're going in the direction that mechanical nature wants to take us, which is more mechanicity. Because that light, that flame that is going out, is what raises mechanicity to a higher level. It is the only thing that can enhance or imbue the mechanical with something divine. Because mechanicity is trapped in time. Mechanicity is governed by the moon and the cycles of the moon. Mechanical nature is governed by those cycles, birth, death. And that's why we have the seasons. We have high tide, low tide, the law of the pendulum, and the divide and conquer, and the law of entropy. Everything must break down. and get recycled. But when the fire and the light, the divine nature comes and partakes and awakens within that mechanical nature is transformed, it's transmuted into something greater, something far greater than what it's normally capable of. If you've been watching season 2 of Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse, he has begun his second season looking at the megalithic structures in Rapa Nui and in South America, in places like Peru and elsewhere, where you have these, and I had it in my browser and I closed it. I shouldn't have done so. Mind you, I can't play any of it because Netflix will immediately shut me down for violation, copyright.
Hey, so Captain, what about you? I mean, you don't gripe at all?
I don't gripe to you, right?
Okay, so I got to stop that right away. How do I open that up with the, I know I can do that. Okay, all right. So let's just do this for a second. So it's mostly the sound that you get caught.
Hey, so Captain, what about you? I mean, you don't gripe at all?
Okay, quiet already. Okay, so we'll take the sound all the way off and we'll go to episodes. Chapter 1, So when you look at these are the mounds. When you look at the that's not working. Okay. This will work better. So when you look at the megalithic structures, this is one of the most famous ones here. This has, I believe, 15 different edges. Maybe that's not 15. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I count 12. So you see how these megalithic blocks were fit together. And there's no mortar anywhere here, but they're so tightly fit and they're perfectly hewn or cut or molded somehow that these limestone blocks, some of them weigh as much as like 50 tons or even more than that. Depends on, not these ones specifically, but when you look at these like little smaller stones and how everything's perfectly cut to fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, there's no mortar there. Also, there's so little space that you can't even slide in a piece of paper. And because there's so little space there, vegetation hasn't been able to get in there and grow there to cause any sort of separation or degradation. What Graham Hancock doesn't know, he knows that intuitively, he knows that we're looking at the technology of a lost civilization. He knows that. But what he doesn't realize, what very few people realize, is we're not looking at Atlantean technology here. We're looking at Lemurian technology. This wall is Lemurian, not Atlantean. which means this wall survived two global cataclysms, not one, two. And you ask yourself, how is that possible? How is it possible that something could survive that long? Ah. And the answer is that these stones are alive. But all stones are alive. All stones have a monad. So what's different? What's special about these stones? And what's different about these stones? These members of the mineral kingdom is that their physical bodies have been imbued and charged with meaning and purpose. The light, the fire, burns bright within these members of the mineral kingdom. They were given meaning and purpose to stand tall and stand together and hold one another's hands. They were given new life as blocks within these walls. They have meaning and purpose. And as you know, as all of us know, meaning and purpose gives us a reason to live. Without meaning and purpose, we have no reason to live. We really don't. Our lives are empty. And that hole in our heart, we can't fill with anything. Least of all that emptiness, all the garbage that we're surrounded with these days, because the light is going out of all of it. But the light is not going out in these walls. The candle still burns bright. That's why these walls have, since the Lemurian epoch, have stood the test of time. Because remember that monads in the mineral kingdom, you can measure their lifespans in millions of years or hundreds of thousands of years, depending on the type of rock that they are. This particular type of rock is not particularly, it's like a limestone type rock. And people are speculating that it's a geopolymer and that it was all, like people are trying to apply modern materialist scientific understanding to how these things were molded and shaped. And really all of this was done with the power of sound. And I don't want to get into the weeds of, all of that, because this is not a lesson on geoengineering. But these rocks are alive. And if you give any being a greater meaning and purpose, in other words, a purpose of sacrifice, of service to others, a meaning and purpose of selflessness, where's our whiteboard? Selflessness. Then this light, this flame, right in here, will keep radiating and will keep giving back. And so whatever is containing it, whatever that flame is contained in, will have longevity beyond what anybody considers, quote, natural or possible. This is why in many scriptures and myths, and in the past, we have heard legends of individuals who have lived for hundreds of years. Then there's the stories of Count Saint Germain, who has been alive for thousands of years. How is that possible? If the light within has a purpose, then the body, the vessel, will endure. So long as the light is there, then the body will live. But if the light goes out, the body will die. It's as simple as that. And that's what we're experiencing in the Kali Yuga. The light of this humanity is going out. And it is in part going out so rapidly now and precipitously because what seems to prevail, what seems to be prominent, is selfishness. The nature of that light is selflessness. There's nothing selfish about it. Selfishness is absorption. And that's what you see all around you. And that's what's so draining. That gives you that feeling of emptiness. It's empty because there's no light, there's no radiance, there's no voluptuousness that's giving and giving and giving and giving. Like the love of a mother, right? The Divine Mother is Kali now. She's the destroyer of worlds. It's like a mother burying her child. A mother doesn't go on nursing her dead child. If her child is dead, then the mother will bury that child. And so this is what we're facing. And so many are so cut off from their inner light, from their inner fire, that inner candle flame, because they've been seduced, because they've been hypnotized. Because they've been talked into and convinced that selfishness, they need to be selfish. And because the way the world is, I mean, look, I don't know wherever you live, the rental prices, right, and the price of home ownership has simply gone through the roof, pardon the pun. And with all the inflation, even the cost of living, the cost of eating is all going up as our money becomes more and more worthless. Again, what is inflation? The value of every dollar is going down. The buying power of a dollar is going down. As a symbol of energy, one symbolic unit of energy doesn't have the same impact in the world as it used to. That's the same as saying that the light, the candlelight, doesn't give off the same light as it used to. Practically speaking, it's like the room is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, but the candle is still the same and it's burning out. So that huge room feels darker and darker and darker the bigger it gets. That's inflation. The value of the light is diminished by virtue of its inability to fill the room. All of this is compounding to everything you touch, everything you see, everything you interact with. It feels more and more mechanical and more empty. It doesn't matter how fantastic it is. You can sit in a modern supercar that's hundreds of thousands, if not close to $1 million, and be completely unmoved by it. Yes, it's hyper fast. It can scare the bejesus out of you, as it takes you from 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds. And as it far exceeds 200 miles an hour, which in my day, when I was a teenager, looking at cars and car magazines, it was unheard of that a street legal car would go faster than 200 miles an hour. I saw it in my lifetime back when I was a teenager. I guess the Porsche 959 and the Ferrari F40 did it first, if I'm not mistaken. Nowadays, it's commonplace for supercars and hypercars for their speedometers to go well beyond 200 miles an hour. And so, yeah, it can move you. It can give you an emotional experience, like fearing for your life. And it can give you an adrenaline rush. It can give you all that physiological rush, but it doesn't move your soul. It doesn't move your soul. There's very little beauty in it. There could be opulence, right? There's luxury. There's all kinds of stuff in it, but it doesn't have the same heart, the same soul that it once had. And there's so much in life that's like that. Benjamin is, he's saying, the selfishness of humanity is similar to what Scripture warned us thousands of years ago. He says, but mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. Have nothing to do with such people. So I can always count on Benjamin to come in with the relevant Bible quote, because of course Benjamin is absolutely right. What is it about this quote that Benjamin shared with us from Timothy? What about this in any way, shape, or form is inaccurate? But you see, when he says here, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, this is what I'm referring to. When I talk about the emptiness of things, the shallowness of things, the hollowness of things. People fall in love with their things. It's like idolatry. It's idolatry itself. And forgive me for saying, but it's like all the people who are in love with Jesus. And they worship Jesus. And Jesus is going to save them. But they're completely ignorant of Christ. They equate the two. They think that Jesus is the Christ. But they can't feel the Christ around them. They don't even know to look. They don't even know to think to look. Why? Well, because Jesus, the man, is coming back to save me. So that's why they're unaware and they're completely ignorant that that the Christ is absent from their life and is being sucked out of everything all around them, and that their belief in Jesus the man is not the same as communing and being one with the Christ. Because that too, idolatry, that kind of belief, that too is a kind of emptiness. There's an emptiness to it. But it makes them feel good. It makes us feel good to believe this or believe that. So how do we get over it? If everything around us feels empty, it is empty and nothing is feeding our soul, does that mean we too are empty? And we feel the emptiness and we let it get to us? How do we deal with that? How do we cope with that? What can we do? If we can't make the world around us fulfilling, what can we do to feel fulfilled? And the answer, as I have shared with you in the past, is to recognize that to be fulfilled, we must be filled with the light. To feel fulfilled, our cup must runneth over. And when a cup runneth over, it's spilling over, it's spilling out. Fulfillment, there is only one way to feel fulfilled. And the irony of it is that you cannot feel fulfilled by using the modus operandi of the darkness, of mechanicity, of the false self. I'm going to throw some more words up here. I hope you don't mind. This is going to seem a little self-serving, but regardless. This is human 2.0, and this is human 3.0. Human 3.0 is comprehensive. It is the light and the dark and the union of light and dark. It is the light working in and through the dark. It is here, right? It is this. And when that burns bright, it transforms this whole section. And now we have something truly unique. Whereas if you don't have that, you just have this darkness, this blackness. That's human 2.0, which is in opposition to, right? You have this you have these opposing forces. They're in opposition to one another, black or white, us or them, right or wrong. But human 3.0 reconciles all of that. And again, it transforms that darkness. It transmutes that darkness into something new and vibrant and wonderful, like the walls, the Lemurian walls in Peru, or in Japan, or in Rapa Nui. Those walls that will last for an unimaginably long time, because that darkness which is normally selfish and self-serving, has now been transmuted into a force of light, into a force of good, into a force of God. That dark selfishness, that mechanicity, has been transformed and transmuted into something selfless, which is God's nature. God is pure selflessness. And when you are fulfilled, because you have purpose and meaning, and you are fulfilling your purpose and meaning, you will feel fulfilled. You will feel fulfilled. You will be fulfilled. And you will be fulfilled by the very light that is inside of you, that is pouring forth in through the world through you. You become the vessel, you become the vehicle, the conduit to bring the light into the world. And in your own way, like we've shown here, like we've highlighted, the dark becomes golden. And you, in your own way, bringing your own innermost essence of Christ, your own innermost intimate Christ into the world through your thoughts and your words and your deeds, you become the light of the world. Made in the image and likeness of God and following in the footsteps of Christ, you become a true Christian. Why? Because in your own way, at your own level, you are fulfilling your destiny, your purpose, your meaning, and playing out the cosmic drama at your level, whatever level that may be. So it may be that the bread that you bake in your bakery, when people eat it, it's like for them manna from heaven. It's like a religious experience for somebody to buy cupcakes from your bakery, or pretzels, hand twisted pretzels that you make from your great grandmother's Bavarian recipe, or whatever, or the way that you lay bricks in a wall, or the way that you do welding, or the way that you clean houses, or the way that you take care of the sick, or the way that you take care of children, or the way that you're a teacher, or the way that you, whatever it is that you do, in everything that you do, that spark, that flame, that fire in your heart colors, directs, imbues you with that enthusiasm and that passion and that love and that selflessness to give and give and give of yourself through your works. So that when people interact with what you make or what you do or how you serve them, they for a moment have the potential of experiencing soul food, that their soul is being fed, and that what they are encountering is not empty, is not void, is not just superficially aesthetic. It's not that you bake a really beautiful cupcake, but then when people bite into it, it's like, it's the same old sugary, sweet, empty, flowery, fluffy, meaningless, pointless, nothing. Right? No, when they bite into your cupcake, it's like they're biting into grandma's cupcake. Right? The cupcake that grandma baked for them, which is never empty. It's always full of grandma's love and grandma's care. And that's why when we talk about Attlas Conscious Arts, we talk about the work that we do on earth, that it art on earth as our Father who art in heaven. Because that word art means to be, it means is. Our Father who is in heaven, our Father who art in heaven. And is, that I, S, is E and S. That's the mantra of the crown chakra and the root chakra. That's is, I, S. That's I and the Sig rune. Our Father who art in heaven, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So we art as our Father who art in heaven. And that's why it's Attlas Conscious Arts. You make of yourself, you make of your life a work of art made in the image and likeness of God, made in the image and likeness of your Father who art in heaven. If you do that, you are embodying the Son of God. You are embodying the Christ. Because if your Father in heaven and what you are doing is his will on earth as it is in heaven, and he is your Father, well, then you are his son, you are his daughter. You are embodying the Christ through your work, through your art, at your level. It doesn't mean that you're on the same level as Christ just because you make really good cupcakes. But at your level, if you do what you came here to do and do it to the absolute best of your ability, and you embody the spirit, the essence of that selflessness, and you experience the joy and the wonder and the satisfaction in the eyes of others who experience and connect with you through your works, and you see their flame glowing brighter as a result. You have fed their soul, and you have encouraged them. You have facilitated them feeling their innermost Christ. Why? Because they felt it in your works. And surely Benjamin knows the exact quote or where to find it in the Bible when he says, anywhere where two of my children come together to speak about me or to be with me or to worship me, I will be there with them. It's something like that. I'm loosely paraphrasing, but wherever two congregate to worship me, I will be among them. What does that mean? That means that anytime God experiences himself and knows himself through any one of us, any two of us, I should say, and then the compounding effect of that becomes greater than the sum of its parts, because the one and one does not equal two. When it's done consciously in the image and likeness of God, it becomes three. Because 1 + 1 does not equal 2. 1 + 1 is 1, and the union of 1 and 1, that's 3. And sure enough, I knew Benjamin would know where it's from. He says, for where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I am there among them. That, I personally feel, is probably a mistranslation. But metaphysically, what that statement is saying is, for where two are gathered together in my name, I am there among them and we become three. I'm sharing with you the esoteric significance and the true meaning of that statement, of that quote, because that is an expression of the law of three. That is an expression of white tantra. That is an expression of what I've been talking about thus far with relation to the Tao. And it's an expression of what I mean is, if you embody and imbue and express Christ in the world, and you help kindle or awaken or stimulate or inspire or cause the spark of momentary self-awareness in the other of their own innermost Christ, because of the virtue of the fact that they touched the Christ in you or through your works, when Christ and Christ meet, when two fractions of the Holy Spirit meet, they give rise to the third, the Son of Man, and that's the Christ. Because in us, that intimate Christ expresses as the Holy Spirit through us. Because the Christ is a perfect multiple unity. So anytime two fragments of himself come together, it gives rise to the whole. And that's why congregation is so powerful in Christianity, and why all Christians, they find so much strength and power in congregations, like all religions do. Let's face it, like all spiritual groups do. It's not only that you find God in meditation at the top of a mountain like yogis in India, because frankly, many of the yogis in India, they're not anywhere near becoming masters, precisely because they're isolated, because they're on top of a mountain. And Benjamin says, or I am in their midst. Benjamin Raphael also said, in these times of emptiness and darkness, we should be like the wise virgin who bought oil for her lamp while waiting for the wedding feast to arrive. This is in reference to the parable of the 10 virgins. The meaning of that, the wedding feast relates to the arrival of the kingdom of God. So in the end times, but the wise virgin lights the lamp, the oil lamp within. So again, if in the Kali Yuga, in the end times, this is happening and we're waiting for death, we're waiting for the darkness, the ultimate darkness to arrive, and for this light, for that light to be snuffed out once and for all for this humanity. Right? And all you have left is the smoke rising off of that candle where the flame used to be. Who is going to endure? Who is going to keep going through this period of death to be able to come and see through the new golden age? If all of this goes dark and death, all of this is dark, all of this is darkness, right? Only those who have lit the lamp, lit the flame in their lamp, right? I'm just going to draw a lamp like this in their hand, because that's that's what the lamps look like, right? An oil lamp. Back in the time of Jesus, anyway. You have to light the lamp inside of you. You cannot rely on the flame, on the spark that has been lighting humanity, because that flame is going out. That light is going out. It's being exhausted. So you must light the lamp inside. You must light that fire within. Well, how do you do that? Your light, your fire, that fire of selflessness, that light of selflessness. If what you are doing is illuminating the matter, the darkness, the mechanicity, and you are illuminating that with your light, that light will continue to shine. If you enlighten your soul, you will survive, because you will be a child of Israel, Isis Ra Elohim, mother, father, and son, the Son of Man. No mother and father neglect or abandon their child, least of all the Son of Man, the Son of God. We are not forsaken, we are not abandoned, especially if we are illuminating and raising, elevating the darkness, the mechanicity, to something greater, to something higher. We're transmuting our lower self into our higher self. And by virtue of doing that, allowing others to touch God here on earth through our words, through our actions, through our thoughts. We are bringing that light into the world. So long as we are bringing that light into that world, that light is going to continue flowing through us. And how can we not be fulfilled? And how can we not inspire others to do the same and feel the same? What we need is a community of fulfillment, a community of people who are dedicated and devoted to being human 3.0 and bringing that light and that fire and that truth and inspiration and love and beauty into the world through their thoughts and their words and their deeds, their artwork and everything that they do. This is what becomes this is the foundation of the ark. The ark and the arch, which gets us through the end of the Kali Yuga, that gets us through all of the death and destruction. Because what causes that death and destruction is the going out of the light. So the ark keeps the light alive. It's that lamp. That the wise virgin, and why is she a virgin? Because that lamp is sexual energy, and you cannot light the lamp if you're spilling your oil. If you're burning your oil off in lust, you will not have enough oil left to light the lamp. And the wedding, waiting for the wedding feast, because what happens after the wedding feast? Well, it's the wedding night. And what happens at the wedding night? The consummation of the marriage and the setting of the stage for the birth of the new golden age. But no one who fornicates is going to see the new golden age, because the golden age is not there for fornicators. It's for the virgin. It's for the wise virgin who invests, right? She buys oil for her lamp, which means she makes an investment in herself. She doesn't squander. She doesn't throw it away. She doesn't throw away her money. She buys something of value that's of use, that is practical and useful to get over and through the what's coming. Benjamin Ochoa also says, "For where there are two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in their midst." Again, this two or three gathered together in my name, there are two. All it takes is two gathered together in my name, and I am there in their midst. I and they, the two come together as the third. The coming together of the two becomes the third. And in that way, I am there amidst them, because that's a triunity, that's a trinity, made in the image and likeness of God. Of course, the early church fathers, they wanted to remove all references to white tantra. So for them, this is a convenient rewrite, which allows them to just focus on congregation. But regardless, either way, because you bring many people together, obviously, you can feel the presence of divinity. When you get a whole church together singing Ave Maria or Amazing Grace or any number of hymns, it's very hard it's very hard not to feel the presence of God. Let's put it that way. But the point of all of this discussion is to recognize that true fulfillment comes from within, and that if we look for it or seek it outside of ourselves, we are setting ourselves up for disappointment, especially now that we are nearing the end of the Kali Yuga. But that's why community is so important, and that's why being selective of the things that we eat and the impressions that we eat, the movies that we watch, the music that we listen to, it's important to remain cognizant and conscious of what we're putting in ourselves, that we not be consuming things that are actually draining us in the process. Now, at the same time that I say that, we have to be honest with ourselves and we have to be realistic. And, it's okay every now and then just to tune your mind out and watch some fluff movie, right? It's okay every now and then to, have a treat or have some junk food or do whatever, because we've probably conditioned ourselves to that or been conditioned to that since childhood. Then there's a time and place for everything. So sometimes you just want some mindless entertainment to pass out on the couch in front of Netflix or whatever, because you've had a long week and you're tired, you're exhausted, or whatever the case may be. And so games are really good for that as well, that they allow you to take your mind off of more troubling facets of your life, more difficult or trying aspects of your daily life. You can escape into a different universe via a game or via a movie, via a book, As for soul food, we can always return to those films or books or movies, songs that have always enlightened or enlivened us, have always warmed our heart, have always kindled that flame inside of us, have always inspired us, and cherish that. I would not, and if you can afford it, if you can find them, you don't have to get them on Blu-ray or whatever, but if you have such films or whatever that you return to on a regular basis to help uplift your spirit, I highly recommend you get those into some form of physical media, because I would not recommend relying on Netflix or some other streaming service to have them available for you whenever you want to watch them. Because just recently, I was looking on Netflix, here on Netflix Canada, and they announced, if I recall correctly, that Shawshank Redemption is going to be leaving Netflix. Same with Gladiator. Same with a whole bunch of films. I got an email saying, "Oh, here are the films that are going to be leaving Netflix soon." I always thought, right, the promise of the internet and the promise of streaming and the promise of all this was that Netflix was going to be this online library, this online repository for all of the greatest films ever made. And so you won't have to worry about collecting them and having your own collection and having them on physical media. All you need is your Netflix subscription, and you will always have access to the greatest movies ever made. Well, clearly that was a lie. Clearly, Netflix is not in the business of performing that service for humanity. They're in the business of making money. And so if they have something in their library that isn't watched regularly by hundreds of thousands of people, then it's taking up server space. If nobody's watching it, then obviously nobody wants it there. So we can get rid of it. You see, this is mechanicity. This is pure, raw, mechanical, robot, AI thinking. No heart, no soul. If people aren't watching it, obviously people don't like it, people don't want it, so we can get rid of it. Imagine if libraries thought that way. Do you think a library could get away with that? How many libraries do you think have copies of War and Peace, or copies of, I don't know, Shakespeare's Henry V, or copies of various books by Tolstoy, or that have been sitting on the shelf for years, and nobody has borrowed them. Nobody has checked them out. Imagine if libraries thought that way, as Netflix does. Oh, nobody's watching them, nobody's reading it, so yeah, we'll just put it out in the bin, and then we'll burn it on Saturday with all the other books that nobody's reading. Why? Well, because we have to maximize our efficiency. We have to open up shelf room. Why? Well, because there's a new, there's a new reprint of Harry Potter, and that's really popular. People want to read Harry Potter all the time. So we're going to get rid of Tolstoy, and we're going to get rid of all the Shakespeare, and we're going to get rid of all the stuff that nobody's reading, and we're going to replace it all with a new reprint of the Harry Potter books. That's what Netflix is doing. Make no mistake. Imagine if libraries thought that way, or if museums thought that way, or if art galleries thought that way. Who knows? Maybe they do. Maybe there are Renaissance classics and God only knows what that gets shifted out of the galleries and shoved down into the basement cellar somewhere or sold on the old open market to make room for bananas duct taped to whiteboard. Because we have to stay modern. We have to stay with the times. Yeah, but those times, they are changing. And those times are devoid of the light and the fire and the love and the beauty that comes from the flame of the Christ, of God, of godliness. You see where we're going? You see what we're getting at here? That library example is such a powerful one. Why? Because the books are like sacred. Burning books, that's sacrilege. Book burning is a recognized assault on culture, on truth. Why? It is burning the word. It is burning the word. We're not talking about burning the Bible. We're just talking about burning books. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because in those books are an extension. Those are the sequels to the Bible. Because they are part of the living, breathing word of God. Every best-selling work of high art or classical literature ever made, you can find its dominant themes, you can find them in the Bible. They are echoed in the Bible. Jordan Peterson points this out, as does his good friend and symbologist, Jonathan Pajot. They will point this out. Jordan Peterson has made a point of basing one of his primary thesis on the nature of the West is that the Bible is the foundational corpus for that defines everything that we know and love about the West, about modern Western civilization. It can be traced back to the Bible. So when people burn books, they are burning extensions. They are burning living, breathing homages to the Bible, allusions to the Bible, not illusions, allusions. Because they are the word incarnate in a new form, in a new expression that is more contemporary, not modern, but contemporary to the people in the time. But what does that say about this modern art? What does that say about the banana duct taped to the canvas? Is that too an expression that's appropriate to the people of its time? Some people, yes, but not everyone. And for everyone who feels the emptiness and feels a little part of them dying inside when they see that featured, that banana duct taped to a canvas featured on mainstream media as some kind of brilliant work of art, we kind of throw up a little in our mouths and we feel something kind of die inside when we see that. Because we know that is not an expression of beauty and truth and light and love. It's ego masturbation is what it is. It's mechanical nature trolling God, saying, haha, it's my age, I rule the Kali Yuga, and now I rule all the art galleries and all the museums and all the science classes and all the laboratories. I rule. It's my world now. And it's a world of darkness. It's a world where I get to exploit the light, and I get to do things my way. And we feel all that, and we feel the emptiness of it. And we feel all the suffering of all the people who feel that emptiness. But that's why it's so important for us now in this time to bring forth the light that's inside of us. Even if it is going to fall on deaf ears, like my campaign that I'm running, a 10 for Human 3.0. It's all but fizzled out, right? No, there has been no video that has gone viral. There has been no influencer to step up and say, yeah, this is, we're going to support this, or we're going to get the word out on this, or anything else. Nothing. It's just fizzled out. Benjamin says, I've noticed that movies and music aren't the same as they were when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s. That's why I collect great movies and store them on Plex. I canceled Netflix a while ago. You're saying a lot there. I was really spoiled music-wise, because I grew up, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And when I was a kid, I was listening to the music from the 50s and 60s. So the music that I grew up with spans this whole multi-generational explosion of some of the greatest, most orchestral, most moving and epic and I stopped listening to contemporary music right around the time when house and hip hop really started to take off. That's when I checked out, because that music may speak to certain people and certain cultural elements, and people identify with it, and the stories and whatever the narratives that are being told in it. But I do not in any way, shape, or form see or hear the fire and the light of truth and beauty and selflessness. Not in that music, not in the culture that surrounds it. The hip hop culture, the gangster rap culture of hose and blow and all the rest of it, right? Fast cars and and all that whole scene is antithetical to beauty and truth and love and light. There's nothing universal there. There's no heroism there. It's isolated to a certain cultural group, but that the effect of that, the influence of that cultural group is profound, and has taken over in many ways. And that is and if you look at the music scene, the popular music scene ever since, it has just gone downhill. It's just a downward spiral. And then it's opened up the doors for people like what's her face, the Taylor Swift, right? And the deal that she cut with the devil. and you look at the satanic imagery in her concerts, it's remarkable to watch. Sometimes you can watch these reaction videos, and you can watch millennials discovering the music that we grew up on. 70s, 80s music, rock ballads and so on, Styx and Boston and Kansas and Toto and, you know, and the Eagles and everything else in between. And you watch these millennials listening to this music with their jaw dropped, their eyes wide open, and they're just completely blown away. The lyricism, the universality, the heroism, the truth, the epic nature, the orchestrations, the vocalizations, and just the nothing any gangster rap artist has ever put pen to paper and come close to touching any of it. I'm not saying what they're writing isn't true or doesn't have any meaning or significance to people in their community or people who have shared experiences. It's just, as Plato would say, it's vulgar. It's just a reflection of their real life. It's not a reflection of their soul. The music that we listened to growing up was holding a mirror, not just holding a mirror up to ourselves, up to life. It was holding a mirror up to our souls. And not just our souls, but everyone's souls throughout all time. And you can hear it, you can see it, you can feel it. That's why songs like Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen has been a chart-topping song for multiple different generations in a row. It's one of the only songs to ever do that, where it broke. It got to number one on the charts for multiple different generations. Why? Because it's timeless and it's universal. It is operatic. Their album, A Night at the Opera, was rightly named. Right? Freddie Mercury got it right when he said, "This is my magnum opus." This is, and generations will be listening to that music, and they have been. I don't know many rap songs, but I know that there won't be generations listening to it. Not in any meaningful way. Out of nostalgia, maybe, out of who knows what. But Benjamin says, the duct tape banana on the wall is a satirical commentary on the current state of human intelligence. There was a person who casually placed a pineapple in a museum, and visitors mistook it for a piece of art, taking pictures of it. Yeah, so the banana on the wall is clever. It's clever. Clever satirical commentary on the current state of human intelligence. That's holding a mirror up to the present. That's what that is. It's not high art. It doesn't say anything about the human soul. It doesn't. It just says, oh, look how clever I am. Look at the satirical commentary I'm making on the current state of human intelligence. You know, we have a word for that. That's satire, that's commentary, that's comedy. That's not high art. It's not art. It belongs on a comedy stage, or it belongs on the in the funny papers, or it's that's normally what graffiti used to be, right? It's street art. but it doesn't belong in the Louvre, right, next to the Mona Lisa. There's no future generations who are going to be admiring the banana duct tape, to the wall. And it's ironic, the fact that it's in a museum, because it's like you're saying, the joke that, the person who put the pineapple in a museum and people mistook it for a piece of art. But the irony is that the artist who duct taped the banana to the wall is just repeating the experiment. He thinks he's being clever and ironic and satirical, but he's not. They're just adding to the problem because nobody gets it. People are now admiring his banana on the wall as a work of art. Even if he explains it to them, they're not going to get it. It's what Plato would have called a vulgarity. And I keep coming back to that because so much of what's created, it's like I prefaced at the very beginning. So much of what we see is clever, it's ingenious, in fact, and it's technically proficient, and it's beautiful, and it's glossy, and it's snazzy, and it's brilliantly executed, and it's completely void and empty of that which can feed your soul. A real artist would have taken the pineapple in the museum story and used that story, that tragedy or that situation, and created a work of art that doesn't just repeat the story, repeat the experiment, and say, oh, look how clever I am. I repeated the experiment with banana and duct tape and called it a satirical commentary. No. A real artist would say, how do I remedy that situation? And how do I reveal what is going on that caused that situation? How do I raise the consciousness of humanity and make them aware of the problem and show them the solution? And how can I stimulate within them that which would allow them to make that discernment for themselves of why that's a problem? A true artist would have turned within for guidance, and the result would have been inspired. It would have been high art. It would have been something that came from hyperspace and something that raised all who engaged with it into a hyper reality, a hyper real experience, where now from the high, like a seeming higher dimension, a higher place of consciousness, they can evaluate the causes and effects around the superficial external circumstances. You may say that's harsh, or you may say that's judgmental, you may say that's closed-minded, or you can call that whatever you want to. But if your goal is to make some form of impactful expression around child obesity, or around trafficking or murder. My hope is that the answer would not be to take a corpse and duct tape a corpse to the wall in a museum, or to take a fat child, an overweight child, and duct tape him to a wall in a museum. Right? That's vulgar. You'd have to agree that's a vulgarity. You're not doing anything. You're making a statement, and you're showing something, and you're holding a mirror up to the world. Say, look how terrible this is. Look at this fat, obese child that still has ketchup and mustard stains all around their mouth from stuffing their face with all the junk food. Yeah, you're making a statement about childhood obesity, but is it art? Is it high art? No, it's a vulgarity, is what it is. It's at best some kind of witty, clever documentary pretending to be art. It is the illusion of art. And frankly, that's what most modern art is. Most modern art is the illusion of art, in the same way that intellect is the illusion of knowledge. It's a delusion. The intellect, the mind, thinks that it knows something, but it can't know. In the same way that a documentary can think that it's art, but it's not. It's a documentary. It's a form. It has its own artistic form. It has its own genre. And you can have very well done documentaries. There's obviously a craft involved there. There's artfulness to documentaries, but it's a documentary. Just like comedy is an art form, no doubt it's an art form. And some comedy even can rise to the level of high art, or at least high philosophy. Like people like George Carlin, for example, where his comedy bits became like essays, became like the dissertations of approaching a kind of philosophy. But you said there's a reason why we used to have these delineated and fairly strict definitions, because there's nothing that the Black Lodge likes more than to pretend. And what's the number one way in which mechanicity is invading the art world right now? It's AI art. AI generated images, AI generated video, AI generated music, pretending to be real art. It cannot be. It isn't. It isn't. It isn't, because it's degenerative. It's not generative, it's degenerated. It's degenerative. It is both degenerated and derivative at the same time. It's a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. And if you only train images on AI art, the images coming out, if someone does this experiment where they take a new AI and they only train it on AI made art, watch what that new AI puts out. It'll be horrific. It'll be so awful. It'll be so terrible. And then if you take that body of art, AI art, and get another AI to train only on that and see what it puts out, it's going to be this curve. It's going to be this curve, but it's going to be exponentially falling, precipitously falling off, like a logarithmic curve. It'll be crazy. It'll be so awful. And Benjamin says, I agree with you that contemporary art often feels like an illusion. The release of The Matrix coincided with a decline in mainstream media. Everything seems to be mechanical and AI driven now. well, because all of Hollywood and all of video games, all of entertainment, all of that whole media conglomerate is all owned by corporations, and corporations are heartless, soulless machines. They're complete mechanical entities, and as such, they're incapable of making art. Something that has no heart and no soul cannot make art. And so someone who thinks through their art piece, yeah, it can be clever, it can be witty, it can be satirical, it can be a lot of things, but it can't be art. Because the heart wasn't involved. There is no love, there's no beauty, there's no passion, there's no truth in there. There's just witty intellectualism. Right? It's like a political cartoon, right? Or an editorial cartoon. There's a reason why those get printed in the newspaper, and they, generally speaking, don't end up in art galleries unless you take one political cartoonist's life's work and you curate it and you put it into a temporary exhibit honoring his death or honoring his life's work, saying this particular editorial cartoonist has been working and doing editorial cartoons for 50 years and 3 generations. For 3 generations, he's been holding a candle up to the world, a mirror up to the world. And we want to honor his skill and his devotion to his craft. Sure, fine, okay. That's perfectly understandable and acceptable, but you're not going to give any of his cartoons a permanent place in the Louvre next to the Mona Lisa. It's just not going to happen. Or at least it shouldn't. Because it's not that kind of art. Right? There's artfulness in everything. There's artfulness in culinary. Right? In the foods that chefs prepare and plate. There's artwork in there. There's an art to it. But you don't take those plates and put them in a museum. Because there are levels and levels and levels. And just like, you know who understand this really well are the Tibetan Buddhists, who make those beautiful sand mandalas, that sand art. They make it out of sand. And they know as soon as they make it, it's already being destroyed. It's there to help teach them non-attachment and non-identification, that everything goes. And they imbue these mandalas, these incredible works of art, with all of this significance. And yet, as soon as it's finished, it's starting to degrade. It's starting to be eroded away by wind and by people stepping on it and sweeping it away. Right? All right. So, surrounded by, what we could call energy vampires or energy vampirism, all that emptiness that's sucking the life out of us, and all the lack of soul food that we feel as though our soul is going hungry, right? We can turn to the sources that are infused with the light and with the truth and with beauty. We can turn to classical music. We can turn to the great classical films. We can turn to classical literature. We can read the Bible, right? There are many, many, many ways that we can return. We can go out into nature, of course. We can spend time with animals. We can spend time with our loved ones and with our close friends. There are many ways in which we can commune with that light and with that beauty and with that love. Because really, when we talk about being fulfilled, that's what we're talking about. It's like the scripture from Matthew that was talking about that the two Benjamins were sharing. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, I am there among them. Or as our other Benjamin said, for where there are two or three are gathered together in my name, I am in their midst. And what that is a communion. So as you know, in Christianity, they take Holy Communion. To be one, to feel one with God, to be fed by God, the body of Christ. This is my body that will be given up for you. This is the sacrifice of the Christ. And in Christianity, they take that symbolically, that bread, to be taking in the body and the blood of Christ. So that's communion, to become one with, right? To bind together as one. That's what religare means. That's the Latin root word of religion. Or yug, the Sanskrit root word of yoga, to bind together as one. That's communion. So anything, right? The reason why we're surrounded by all this emptiness and life feels empty is because what doesn't give us that feeling of communion with divinity, that which doesn't connect us to our own innermost or help us connect to others soul to soul, where we don't feel that communion, where we don't experience that communion, there's nothing but unrequited love. There's nothing but emptiness. There's reaching out into the void and nobody there to take your hand, or calling out in a valley, calling out and hearing only your own calls echoing back to you. No one responding. It's a lone wolf howling at the moon and no other wolves responding to his howls. That emptiness, that loneliness, that isolation. And it can be very difficult. It can be very trying for our patients. And really, we have to remember we're never alone. And so even if you do nothing else but journal, you can meditate, you can pray, you can connect with your own innermost being, your own innermost essence, your own intimate essence of Christ within. But you can also journal. You can do something else that's constructive and creative and passionate, and maybe nobody will ever see it. Put yourself in the mindset of those Tibetan Buddhists making that sand art. That not only will the outside world never see it, but in a few days it'll be gone. The wind will have swept it away. So why are you doing it? You're doing it to be able to feel that inspiration, that beauty, and that truth, and that light, and that love flowing through you into something. Write a blog, make a YouTube video, do some painting, do something that lets you feel like you're bringing the light of the world into the world through you. That you are an extension, you are an expression of the light of that world. Then fulfillment will be there, because you will be fulfilled from within. Because, or go and volunteer, or go and do right, give of yourself in some way. Dig deep and find what it is you have to give and bring it forth. For if you bring forth that which is within you, that which is within you shall save you. But if you do not bring forth that which is within you, that which is within you will destroy you. That's from the Gospel of Thomas or Luke. It's from one of the Gospels for sure. And that is the parting sentiment that puts a punctuation point on today's talk. Because when all around, everything around you is empty and devoid of soul food, and there's nothing to feed your soul, then it's that which is within you that will save you, that will give you the nutrition and the feeling of fullness and the reason for being, the reason for existing and continuing to exist. But if you don't do that, if you just keep looking for fulfillment outside of you, then the thing that's inside of you will end your life. Because our purpose for being, our purpose for existence, the meaning of life, is to bring that which is inside of us, to bring it forth, to runneth over and have it fill the world at our level, to be an expression of Christ at our level. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's called self-actualization. It's at the very top. It's above food, it's above shelter, it's above reproduction, it's above everything. It's called self-actualization. Being that which you can be. And to be what you can be means bringing forth the divinity inside of you and allowing that divinity to express through you and transmute and transform you like the light can transform the darkness in the Tao and make it golden. Make it gold. And that's why we value gold so much, because we look at gold and we see what gold is. Gold, that's why gold has been so universally valued throughout the world, throughout time and space, because it is the physical representation and this physical symbol and the manifestation of what I'm talking about here. It is the light and the love and the beauty and the truth and the value and everything made manifest in something physical. That's what gold represents. That's why it's so valuable to us. And it can be shaped and molded, and it does not tarnish. It will not tarnish. It does not oxidize. Gold is one of those substances. It's the closest thing to being an eternal substance, an expression of eternity in matter. And it can be shaped into anything, any form, and it doesn't matter how thin you pound it out. It still shines. It's still resplendent. And it makes so many mundane things so beautiful and so, right? And it's because of this. And that's where the alchemical sense, in alchemy, we transmute lead into gold. And that's like what I drew here, just by highlighting the darkness, the mechanicity, the mechanical. Selfishness can be transmuted into gold through the light. And then that gold can bring joy and great value and great resplendence to others, just by reflecting the light and being resplendent. And that's why gold lasts forever, just like those Lemurian walls are going to last nearly forever, because it has purpose, it has meaning, and that purpose and meaning is higher, it's greater than being selfish. It's selfless. That's where fulfillment comes from. And if all around you is empty and emptiness, then you must be the wellspring to fill it up again and inspire others to find the wellspring within themselves. We have some time for some final comments or questions. Anyone? No comments? No questions? Usually, I usually give you some time, a couple minutes to type away, because I know sometimes some of you are on phones and whatnot, and typing questions or comments is not so, excuse me, is not so easy, or is not so fast. So I don't know what it was like for you in your part of the world today, but here in my part of Canada, it was 22 degrees today, which is unseasonably warm, but certainly beautiful weather, and most welcome. So I hope that things have been good in your neck of the woods. I hope that, I don't know if any of you are down in the Florida area. I don't know if you were affected by the hurricane, but or the Carolinas, because that was also an area that was affected in a major way by the weather. So I hope all is well where you are at. And yeah, so this will be my last week taking care of my dad on my own. His caregiver will be returning on Thursday, so hopefully next weekend I won't be quite as tired and drained of my energy. It's looking after my father. It really is a full-time job. So, and I also hope to get back to working on some videos and being able to make some more stuff and do some more work for the campaign. So we'll see how that goes. But so look, if no one has any comments or questions, then I want to thank you all for being here today again, and hopefully I will see you next week. So have a good week, and remember yourself, remember your Divine Mother, and to seek opportunities to bring your light into the world and feel more fulfilled as a result. Thank you, one and all. Oh, we got some comments. Jennifer says, same temp here in Ohio. Okay. Yeah, nice and warm. And Benjamin says, thank you for today's live stream. I learned a lot. It's important to recognize the current timeline to prepare and reflect. Remember what Benjamin shared about the lamp and the virgin who lights the lamp. Because when the lights go out and all around you is dark, you need to have that lamp. You have to have the oil. You have to have invested and bought the oil so that you can light the lamp inside of you to get you through the darkness, right? That's what that allegory is. That's what that parable is about. Because if you've squandered all your money, if you haven't made an investment in your oil and you don't have any oil in your lamp, when all around you goes dark, you're going to have nothing to see with. You have no way to guide yourself. You have no way to be guided. So cultivate the light inside of you and preserve and conserve the sexual force, because that's the precious oil that we will all need if we hope to traverse the darkness of the end of the Kali Yuga and be a part of establishing the new golden age. So Jennifer says, thanks so much for the live stream. Much appreciated. Well, thank you for being here, Jennifer. It was my pleasure as always, and my honor and my privilege. So thank you one and all. I look forward to seeing everyone next week. And until then, as always, inferential peace. Take care.